Hello, my name is Emery Tate, and I'm an investigative reporter for the True Crime Network. Presently, I am investigating a tragic incident that occurred in the Capulet Crypt 2 days ago. It is a mysterious case to say the least. 16-year-old Romeo Montague and 13-year-old Juliet Capulet were found deceased within the Capulet Crypt. Romeo was discovered dead with a vial of poison next to him, which specialists have believed he had already ingested. And next to him is Juliet, who has a dagger buried deep within her chest.
Another body was found a few meters away from the crypt. He has been identified as Count Paris, who was found lying deceased on the floor with a gaping stab wound in his gut. Suspiciously, a sword was found lying next to him. However, suicide presumably wasn't the cause of his death, leading authorities to believe a more nefarious act was committed. Investigators have started looking into this case, and we believe we have a few people who may have played a vital role in this case. These interviews we have coming up next may help us conclude who is most at fault.
Balthazar is the first person we will be interviewing. He's the manservant and trusted friend of Romeo, and they share a brotherly relationship, as some would say.
We got in touch with Balthazar to plan a meetup and have him tell us his side of the story. After speaking on the phone for a while, we arranged to meet at a specific time and location here in Verona, Italy. We told him to meet at the coffee shop, Cafe Bellissimo, located near the outskirts of the town. Balthazar agreed, and we decided to meet early in the morning. We have sent another reporter to conduct the interview, which should begin shortly.
Hello, my name is Hugh Miller, and I've been assigned as a reporter conducting this interview. I'm currently waiting for Balthazar at the cafe. However, I've been waiting here for almost 15 minutes, and he's still not here. Maybe this is all a hoax. Balthazar, over here.
Are you Hugh Miller, the guy who's supposed to interview me about Romeo and Juliet?
Correct. Please take a seat, and I appreciate you accepting my request for a meeting.
No issue, of course. Just giving the chance to share my perspective makes me grateful.
So tell me, Balthazar, can you recall the events before the tragic loss of Romeo, Juliet, and Paris?
Well, from what I remember, Romeo asked me to accompany him to the tomb. I was afraid to say no, fearing the crazed and wild side that Romeo is showing then.
What was his attitude? Or what did he do at the time?
First of all, he coerced me into giving him a mattock and a wrenching iron. He told me that he was going to take off a ring off Juliet's body. He advised me to leave and not pry into his business. In addition, he asked me to give his father a note he had written and was requesting me to do so. Romeo bid me farewell and gave me some money, wishing me a long and prosperous life. Improper were his intents. I pretended to leave and stayed behind to see what Romeo was up to, lying to him about it. The events that followed, however, are hazy in my memory, since I unintentionally nodded off. However, I had this crazy dream where Romeo killed a person.
What now?
Never mind. Sorry.
Anyways, when you woke up, what did you see? Or what happened?
Well, I was mortified when I witnessed the situation. They were all dead. I overheard Paris's page discussing how Paris drew his sword on Romeo, and they engaged in combat before he reported it. The watchmen were called at that point. However, Romeo's sword was found next to his lifeless body when they returned.
Wouldn't you say you would have been able to prevent this from occurring if you just stayed awake?
Who knows? You can be the judge of that.
Well then, thank you for your time.
Another interview we have back at the station is with the Capulet's home nurse. She voluntarily consented to this telephone interview concerning her involvement in Romeo and Juliet's love quarrel. Let's warmly welcome her.
Hello. I'm busy, so we must make this quick.
Hello, we shall begin now.
Right.
Firstly, what was your role in Juliet's life?
In the beginning, before any of this had happened, Juliet could count on me. Her primary caregiver was me. I consider myself Juliet's second mother, as I nurtured her as if she were my own child, and even breastfed her. I've lived with the Capulet family for over 14 years, and I've known Juliet all of her life. But I can only say that much.
How much did you know of Romeo and Juliet's relationship?
I was one of the only people who knew about Juliet and her relationship with Romeo from start to end. Friar was the other.
Friar, eh? Anyways, did you encourage them or discourage them? Tell me more about your role in their relationship.
It is somewhat illustrious, therefore I'll let you be the judge of that. I suppose you might argue that I served as their middleman initially. After Romeo and Juliet experienced love at first sight, I introduced Juliet to Romeo. He was terrified to discover that the girl he loves is a Capulet due to the conflict between Romeo's family, the Montagues, and the Capulets. Despite being cautious since I knew Juliet would be crushed, I also revealed Romeo's identity to Juliet. I was the one who relayed the news to Romeo and Juliet when they decided to get married the following day at a later stage in the relationship. Despite the conflict, I was prepared to support Juliet. But after Romeo was exiled and Juliet learned from her mother that she would wed Paris the next day, I saw that I could no longer support Juliet in having the relationship she desired with Romeo. I did all in my power to facilitate their marriage because Romeo was a good young man, polite, compassionate, appealing, and moral. I had no choice in persuading her that Paris would make a better husband, even though I was powerless to stop it. Juliet was raised by me, but I was unable to tell whether she was truly feeling anything, or to understand why she seemed to accept Paris.
Why didn't you tell the Capulets about the relationship? It could have prevented their relationship from going to such extreme lengths.
Already, it was too late. Due to their intense love, I was powerless to intervene. Who can say what might have occurred if I had stopped them? She's the happiest person in the world when she's with Romeo. The exact opposite was true when she's alone. Also, I was always on Juliet's side, no matter what.
I see. Well, I think that's all the time we have left. Thank you very much for making the time for us. Oh, wait, hold on. Would you believe that these acts you played by could make you blamed for their death?
I have to get going. I'm very busy right now.
We have another guest scheduled over the phone today. He goes by the name of Prince Ascalis. Hello, my name is Emery Tate. I have some questions for you today. Will you be able to answer them?
Yes, I'm willing to answer any questions.
Firstly, I want to go back a bit. I would like to know about your first interaction with Romeo.
Romeo and I initially came into contact after I exiled him for killing Tybalt. The Montagues lost their son Romeo to exile as the Capulets were punished for the death of their nephew. My judgment is not motivated by personal vengeance or promoting animosity against my orders. Both sides were subjected to severe fines. By killing Tybalt, he was able to get revenge on Mercutio, which reduced the severity of his penalty and spared his life. However, his exile was short-lived as he eventually returned to Verona.
Now, this may sound harsh, but don't you think that if you just killed him, there could have been a possibility that this tragedy would never have occurred?
No, there would have been a tragedy nonetheless.
Is that so? Then tell me, who do you think was the main person to blame for this conflict?
The family feud was to blame. I've always had the uneasy sensation that these two families might experience tragedy. I've done all in my power to mediate a settlement between these parties, but to no avail. Romeo and Juliet's love rivalry was doomed to fail because Romeo was a Montague and Juliet was a Capulet. Things just would not work out in any circumstance. I warned the families that they would be penalized if they were involved in another dispute, though somehow After Romeo and Juliet's tragedy, their enduring quarrel vanished. They declared that they would each offer to create gold statues of Romeo and Juliet for the Capulets and the Montagues, respectively.
Well, why did the Montagues and Capulets hate each other?
The hatred between these two families has coexisted centuries beforehand. They are simply continuing what their forefathers did in a long-running family rivalry.
So just to recap, the death of Romeo was caused by the family feud?
Yes, the underlying cause and the backbone reason behind Romeo's death is the family feud. Without the family feud, none of this would have happened.
Interesting. Well, anyhow, thank you for your time, Prince. I appreciated that you took your time to answer my questions. And would it be possible to give us the contact number off tape?
Yes, no problem. Hello, it's me, Hugh, once again. In our search to find who truly was at fault in the deaths of the 3 teens, our investigations led to the interview of Lord Capulet himself. We called over the phone and decided to meet over brunch at his mansion. Overcome with grief over his only daughter's death, he agreed to speak with me about his involvement leading up to Juliet's demise. Good morning, Lord Capulet. Thank you so much for agreeing to meet with me. I'm sorry our meeting couldn't happen under happier circumstances. And just so you're aware, I have a recording device on right now, so everything you say will be on the record.
Good morning to you too, sir. The robbery of my dear daughter from this world will ache my heart forever, but I believe speaking to you will take a considerable weight off my chest. Also, yes, I understand everything I say will be on the record, and I comply fully.
If it's all right with you, could you start with an account of why you believe to have a role in your daughter's death?
Why, of course. Firstly, despite the ongoing hatred and feud between my family and the Montagues, my involvement in it all was minimal. I barely bothered to try and put an end to the petty bickering and arguing that constantly took place between our families. I surely believe that if I had tried harder to bury the hatchet between us, Romeo and Juliet could have lived the life they wanted to live, free of any restrictions, able to do whatever they pleased, without having to sneak around everywhere.
Wait, I thought you disapproved of Juliet's relationship with Romeo because he was a Montague.
In the heat of the moment, yes, I was filled with rage and disgust over the fact that my baby girl had decided to fall in love with the enemy. But thinking back now, my reaction could have egged the two of them on, bringing them closer to their horrible death.
Why do you think that?
Well, you know how young kids are, always trying to defy those who have more authority than them. Perhaps a different course of action then could have stopped or postponed their outcome. Maybe if I had just talked it through with Juliet instead of going berserk on it, we could have sorted the whole situation out.
Is there anything else you could have done differently?
Yes. Another reason was my brash, arrogant party that caused Romeo and Juliet to meet. If I just kept the invitations to our immediate family members, Romeo never would have decided to come. My uneducated servant played a role in Romeo and Benvolio's arrival as well. He confessed it all to me. Due to his inability to read, he roamed around asking people to read the guest list, and that's how he stumbled into Romeo's cousin Benvolio. From there, the servant invited the two Montagues to the party, and the rest is history.
Wow, I never knew that.
Nobody did. My enthusiasm about Paris and Juliet's marriage could have pushed Juliet away from me and into Romeo's awaiting arms. I was so ecstatic when Juliet's mood finally began to lift after Tybalt's death that I moved up the wedding date. I should have talked to her first. Should have asked what she wanted. Too many should-haves. My attitude towards Juliet and her love choices was crude and mean. She no doubt hated me for it, and that quite possibly was another factor that pushed her ever so far away from me. I will admit, her secret love with Romeo Montague was indeed a rushed relationship, them deciding to marry each other in such a short amount of time. It was almost as if they were on borrowed time. I truly think that if Lord Montague and I had tried harder to bury our differences, Romeo and Juliet's young lives could have gone in a much happier direction.
Thank you for your insight. there anything else that you would like to add?
No, I believe that's everything. Oh, Paris, the youthful one. I regret forcing him to marry Juliet and putting him in this predicament. Consequently, he perished away. Oh, man.
Thank you so much for your time, Lord Capulet. I hope this interview helped get a bit of that weight off your chest.
Oh, very much so. Very much so.
After Capulet gave us a contact of Friar Lawrence, we reached out to him, and he agreed to do the interview, though only if we go to him, not to us. He asked that we meet him at his church. He agreed and sent Hugh on his way to Friar's church.
Hello, this is Hugh once more. I'm inside the chapel waiting for the friar to arrive for the interview.
Ah, are you the one who's hosting the interview?
Yes, my name is Hugh. You must be Friar Lawrence.
Yes, it's a pleasure meeting you.
I can say the same thing for you. Anyways, tell me when you're ready for the interview.
Yes, I'm ready.
Okay, here's the first question. What was your first interaction with the first victim, Romeo, like?
Romeo. He came to the cell as the day was breaking. I was collecting herbs and flowers to make medication and poison when Romeo approached me and confessed his love for Juliet. He then asked if I could have married them in my cell.
So what did you say?
I agreed to the request, as I thought their marriage would finally end the nonsensical feud between the Montagues and the Capulets.
So did they get married?
Yes, they came to my cell, and I married them on a Monday night.
I don't get it. If they got married, why didn't their plan work out?
Because Tybalt, Juliet's cousin, was mad about Romeo's infiltration of the Capulets' party and wanted to duel Romeo. After Romeo killed Tybalt in vengeance for Tybalt killing Mercutio, the Lord figured that Juliet could marry Paris to make her feel better about Tybalt's death, as he believed that was what was troubling her.
I guess Capulet didn't know about Romeo.
That is so. Anyhow, I devised a plan. Juliet would drink a vial that would halt her heartbeat for 48 hours, making her appear dead. Then it would take her to the tomb of the Capulet family, where Romeo would find her, and they would be united without a hitch. However, it went wrong.
How so?
Due to the outbreak of plague going around, the letter I made Friar John, a colleague of mine, delivered to Romeo was unable to be given to him, as he claimed he was quarantined inside of a house, preventing Romeo from having any knowledge of Juliet's fake death. At the time, I thought this all could have been fixed, and I could save Juliet from the tomb instead of Romeo.
Then what stopped you from doing it?
I didn't know at the time, but Romeo was informed by a close friend that Juliet was in the tomb. However, he believed that she was dead. So when I arrived at the front of the tomb, a boy, presumably a friend of Romeo, told me about Romeo's whereabouts, and I proceeded to the tomb. To my dismay, I see Count Paris, lying in a pool of blood, and Romeo's body next to distraught Juliet. She asked me where Romeo was, and I quickly responded. I tried to convince her to leave, and I did, but she wouldn't budge, so I decided to leave the tomb without her.
Wow, what happened after?
I and Romeo's friend got caught by the watchman, and was taken into the tomb, where we saw Paris, Page, Prince, the Capulets, and Montague. Upon the prince's request, I told them the entire story of Romeo and Juliet's tragic end, which was confirmed by Romeo's little friend, who showed them a letter Romeo previously wrote to his father.
I see. Last couple of questions. Let's begin with the major one. Do you believe that you were responsible for the deaths of the 3 individuals?
Well, it's been hard to accept. But I think I had a very major role in the deaths of these 3.
Can you tell us why you think that?
Yes, just give me a moment. Okay, if I didn't encourage your plan in getting married, if I didn't devise a plan in getting them together, they would most certainly not be dead.
Friar, are you okay? We can take a break from the interview if you must.
No, I think I'll be fine. It was deeply selfish of me. I didn't think that my actions would lead to their deaths. I believed that what I did for them could make amends to the Capulets and Montagues. I mean, eventually it did, but at the cost of 3 lives?
Hey, it's okay. We all make mistakes.
I suppose so.
Well, that looks like all the time we have today. You're very brave to speak out. Thank you so much for your time.
Yes, of course.
We have finally completed every single interview. Each interviewer has given us a unique perspective on this incident, and we have concluded who is to blame for this crime. Though each one of these individuals is partially to blame for the deaths of these 3 people, there is one person we can pinpoint who is most responsible for this mess. We have concluded that the person most at fault is Friar Lawrence. We gathered all the interviewers with all their information and evidence, and we decided to meet at the headquarters.
Well, I believe the solution to this case is obvious. The activities of the friar are what caused these 3 people to pass away.
I agree, though despite the fact that Friar was mostly at fault for the terrible tragedy, I think the nurse is also responsible. After all, it was she who assisted Juliet in getting married, encouraged her on, and served as her messenger. If they hadn't been so intimately engaged, this really wouldn't have occurred.
I concur. The fact that the nurse facilitated their relationship up until she, quote, betrayed Juliet may also serve as evidence that she was accountable for the murder. After all, the friar and the nurse both helped to secretly arrange the marriage.
Although the nurse undoubtedly played a role, I still hold true that Friar is the primary cause of the deaths. The friar had given her the potion that would make Juliet seem to be dead. She would ultimately die as a result, along with Romeo.
Friar's intentions were good. He wished to end the feud in Verona. His plan, however, precipitated the tragic end of the 3, though he had no malicious intent toward Romeo or Juliet.
Right. And to clear some things up, Prince, Capulet, and Balthazar were also someone involved. Romeo was exiled by Prince for killing Tybalt, which was perhaps deserved. Capulet maintained the feuds, but this was not the primary cause of the deaths. And what Balthazar did was not sympathize and stay awake for Romeo, which caused the death of Paris and Juliet.
I think we have a definitive answer after all these statements. Friar Lawrence is responsible for the tragedies because he secretly arranged Romeo and Juliet's marriage and supported them even after Romeo was forced into exile by the prince. Last but not least, he also committed the foolish error of giving Juliet the potion, which would simulate her death and inevitably result in her demise. While these were the most important ones, I'm sure there are additional lesser elements that were overlooked.
Okay, well, this case has been intriguing from the beginning, and I'm glad we were able to find a solution. I want to express my gratitude to the interviewees and the audience for tuning in.
Upcoming, the topic of whether Romeo and Juliet's demise was a beneficial factor for the families will be covered on next week's podcast. Adieu.